Sometimes volunteering your time might seem like a waste of time, but I think that's because you might not see the immediate payoff, and the real payoff comes down the line. Stay tuned to find out all about that with farmer Max Becher in this one. Today I'm back home in Vista, California, but this video you're about to see, or the rest of this video you're about to see, was actually filmed up in Ojai, California with farmer Max Becher. This video marks the first in a series of videos that you'll see with Max over the next few weeks. The first one today focuses on that concept that I talked about in the introduction, volunteering. Because volunteering was huge for Max. It got him experience in the field and it opened him up for opportunity, real business opportunity that he used to launch his farm-based business into the farm that it is today. And it's one of those things where Max put in a bunch of time at the beginning, but that didn't pay. The payoff really did come down the line. Even though this video is about farming, I think these lessons are pretty universal. They can apply to any business. Put in your time, build your skills, build relationships, and wait for opportunity to present itself, and then use your skills and those relationships to take advantage of those opportunities. That's exactly what Max did. So let's jump right into it. Head up to Ojai, California with farmer Max Becher. We're at Rancho del Pueblo, Max. This is the farm you started out volunteering on. When it comes time to volunteering your time as a beginner, how important do you think that is?
I think it's crucial. If for nothing else, you got to show yourself that you're committed. And if you can't go out and do it for free, you don't have the commitment it takes to start your own farm, because it takes working for free for yourself for a while. Not only that, you're putting yourself in the environment in which opportunities are going to arise. You're going to be taken more seriously by other farmers because you show that you're passionate about it, you're willing to work for free, and you get skills, you get experience, you soak it in through osmosis and sometimes through personal instruction from the farmer, or just things you observe.
Your volunteer time here, what was it, one day a week? About how many hours a week were you putting in?
It was 3 days a week, three mornings a week. We'd show up at 7 and get off at about 11 or 12.
Okay, so pretty long days. When it comes to being a volunteer, you're not getting paid, and I think a lot of people think, well, that means it's fun, I can kind of slack off, not work that hard. What do you think you should go in with in terms of mindset to be a good volunteer, to get the most out of it for where you want to go in this industry?
I mean, I just say work as hard as you possibly can, treat it like a job, be prompt. Like I said, not only to show the farmer that you're invested and you're into it, but just for your own personal discipline, because you're going to need that when you go into business. Right.
What about in terms of respecting the farmer? I mean, I think the natural tendency is people watch videos like this one here, other stuff on YouTube, podcasts, and they come in to a farmer in a farm like this that's been in business 20 plus years, and they think, oh, we know all the answers as a volunteer, we saw it on YouTube. How do you think you respect the methods of that existing farmer, even if you think something could be done differently or better?
I wouldn't mention it. I mean, I'm incredibly respectful, and I feel like that pays off. I'm always looking around and noticing things that I might do differently, but and I might even ask questions. I might ask why something is done in such a way, but never in a condescending way, never presuming that I know the answer. And I've learned a lot from people. I thought I might know something better than they do.
Sure. And one of the big things that came out of this was opportunity, which you alluded to, and that opportunity was you got the seconds to harvest off of this farm and resell. But in addition to opportunity, I mean, what was one of the big takeaways you learned on this farm that's actually helped you in your farming career, either from a production standpoint, a business standpoint, a personal context standpoint?
I mean, the first thing I learned was just seasonality of crops, how long different crops are in the ground, how to harvest them, how to irrigate them. Really nuts and bolts production was what I picked up. But as far as opportunity goes, it wasn't just the web store. It was while packing orders for this guy here, another farmer saw me, figured I was interested since I was volunteering, and offered me a job at the farmer's market. I got to know the market manager, I got to know the market scene, and now we sell in that market. And when I approached the manager, I approached her as someone I knew, and as someone who I had also respected for the last couple of years, and worked within her context. And you never know when the next opportunity is going to come. I did not expect that call from the other farmer to give me a job at the farmer's market. It was out of the blue, but if he hadn't seen me working, it wouldn't have happened.
Right, you go in with an open mind, put the effort in, look to get out as much of it as you can. How different do you think your farming career would have been if you hadn't started out volunteering first, and say you just went at it straight, I'm going to produce on my own, never having worked at a farm before?
That's a good question, and I think about that a lot because I also learned a lot from the different books that I read, and I probably would have had to glean more from paper and try more on my own. I wouldn't have had the mentors that I did to bounce questions off of. All the time I'll call up Steve. Hey, how do you do this? How do you do that? Or even just getting his opinion on something. Hey, when would you put these plants in? When would you put onions in the ground or something like that? And that's huge. You can spend an hour looking through books and not find the information you're looking for, or you can call up someone who's used to growing in your climate and just ask them straight up.
Makes it easy, right? And it's even easier if you have that relationship, which is built upon time.
Exactly.
It's been 4 years since you've effectively started your farming career by volunteering here. Looking back on those 4 years, what bits of advice would you have for somebody out there watching this who wants to get started into farming?
I would definitely say connect with the local farming scene in your area. Show whoever it is that you're committed and you're willing to work hard. And Joel Salatin says you can learn as much from a conventional farmer as you can from an organic farmer, sometimes even more if they run a tight farm. And, he says the conventional farmer backs up a trailer the same way that an organic farmer does, and a lot of things from irrigation to harvesting are going to be exactly the same. So I would just look for the opportunities closest to you and jump in with all you've got.
Thinking of that, knowing where you're at in your career, if you could do something over that would get you to where you are today faster, easier, cheaper, what would it be?
In my case, it probably would have been actually sticking with my part-time job a little longer before jumping in full-time to the farm. Having that pressure is good, and as far as it really forces you to get going faster, but it would have been less stressful. And I don't know if it would have happened faster, but stress takes a toll and has a lot of unintended consequences. And I'd say making sure you've got a little bit of a more seamless transition from employment to self-employment would be helpful in my case, at least.
Would that money from that part-time job to have helped in terms of funding infrastructure?
It would have.
The farm?
Yep, absolutely. Basically now, the rat race we've been in for the last 3 years is that a lot of the farm income has to go to support our living expenses. The farm could have bought more of its own equipment instead of paying our home rent or our grocery bill or whatever, had a job and paying those expenses.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that, and I was thinking about this on the drive up here from San Diego, is when you start a business, coming out of the full-time employment field, I think a lot of times people are like, I want to get out of this job, I want to do the farming thing, I'm going to do it full-time. It's very hard to work part-time because you still feel like that work slave, working under the man, and you're beholden to that. But I think from seeing enough people, talking to enough people, and seeing my situation, even going through that, the longer you can work a full-time job or part-time job to pay those living expenses and then cycle some of that money into the business to build infrastructure, systems, software, whatever it is, equipment, it's going to make it that much easier when you do transition on versus trying to bootstrap it full-time, pay your living expenses, and grow the farm, like recycle those profits back into the farm to better infrastructure or stuff that you just need to get started. It's that much harder. So, that's one piece of advice I would have for a lot of people is grind out that full-time job a little bit longer, build up savings a little bit more, pay down debt as much as you can, or take that part-time job even if you don't want to, and while it's going to suck in maybe years 1, 2, and 3, year 10 you're going to be thankful for those 3 years of suffering, and then it's over. You never have to do it again.
And I think one hidden benefit is if you have to work a job, you have less time on your farm. And Jean Martin talks about constraint being your biggest ally. And I actually think time constraint is a big ally, because you are forced to build systems that will work more efficiently. You don't have all the free labor of your own labor to pour into your operation. I did, and I built some inefficient systems which we're now improving.
Yeah, unwinding and fixing.
Unwinding, exactly. Yeah, and if I had the extra income to buy more infrastructure and less time to use that infrastructure well, that would have been a real win-win.
Yeah, it's that creativity helps you overcome the constraints. I mean, you look around here behind us and behind the camera, there's 10 acres spread out over here. And I don't know who told me this recently, but they said, on a farm, there's always something else to do. And you can fill the time, whether you work 24 hours a day or 2 hours a day, you're going to fill that time. When you
Absolutely.
only have 2 hours a day to spend, it becomes down to what are the most important things I can use these 2 hours for, and that eliminates a lot of the junk that you probably thought was important and you don't need to be doing.
It's true. Yeah, my best days are my busiest days, or when I'm under pressure for some kind of deadline and I've just got to get it done. You got to get the harvest in, you're going to find some way to get it in.
For Max, eventually all that volunteer time paid off. And it paid off in a big way, because Max actually started selling #2 produce from that farm that you just saw to some other customers. It was good produce, it was sellable produce, and this farmer was just composting it. Max, though, at that point had enough of a relationship with that farmer to say, hey, could I take some of your #2 produce and try selling it? The farmer said yes, and the rest is history. That's how Max got his start. And when it came to starting out, what this actually kickstarted was Max's online store. Max now has an online farm stand that sells produce from 13 or so different farms in the Ojai area, and it's all done online. There's going to be a whole video to come specifically on that topic, but I wanted to introduce the topic today in this video because this farm is the farm that helped start that whole thing.
I volunteered here 3 years ago, and that was actually how I got started with the web store. Right here, picking up, you see peppers in the ground, tomatoes over there, and anything that had a blemish, I was picking up and selling to the customer base that I was cultivating at the time. From there, it really blossomed into a CSA, and anything that Steve was offering, I was able to offer through my CSA. Basically, he has CSA boxes, and I was getting the same box to offer to my customers. And then we started bringing other farms on board, and it grew into what it is now, but it all started right here.
And really what you were doing when it came to the #2 produce, you were looking for the blemished produce that was still sellable, and you were taking it, because he was just going to compost it, you were able to then remarket that product, and then you just split the proceeds with him 50-50. You got the produce for free, essentially. It was up to you to go out and sell it, and he got 50% of those sales for stuff he would have composted anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was really win-win. Yeah, he got some extra money with no skin off his nose, and I was able to get started.
Do you think a lot of farmers would be open to that arrangement, or for somebody new getting into this who doesn't have land and they're looking to start an aggregator business like you have, do you think approaching farms to look for their seconds or their overproduction, their overstock, stuff they're long on, makes sense?
I think it's a great idea. I mean, I spent a lot of time here first, and I spent a lot of time volunteering, working hard, showing up early, showing up on time to show that I was really interested. And I know having that base of a relationship helped. But yeah, I think there's a lot of waste on a lot of farms that, yeah, I mean, it could be sold if you can find a market for it. I was selling really cheap. I was selling it to a lot of families who were getting, a 20-pound tomato box to make sauce out of, or something like that. But yeah, there's waste all over the place, and if you don't have a market for that #2 product, it is waste. Otherwise, it could be something valuable.
Well, Max and I were at the farm looking around, chatting. He was reminiscing about his experiences. There was a big pile of seedling flats laying there, and I started to think, what's the deal with all these flats? There's something really unique about these flats. While a lot of farmers start their own flats for transplant on their own farms, that's not the case here. Find out what they actually are.
So here we've got a bunch of plug trays. These were not started on the farm right here. These were started at a wholesale nursery in Carpinteria, about just a half hour up the road. And for bigger vegetable growers, this is standard practice. It's a little more unusual for a vegetable grower to be starting their own plugs. This particular nursery that Steve gets plants from is not the only one in Carpinteria doing this. Sometimes they're shipped in from nurseries that are further afield, but in this one we're actually able to do it locally. We at our farm just started using the same nursery about 2 months ago, and we've just transplanted our first batch of transplants, and the difference is amazing. Instead of having to seed them all myself, water them, buy the medium, buy the trays, baby them basically, because growing transplants, you got to have a good quality plant going in the ground. I now have professionals doing it for me, and I pay them $13 a flat for a 200 plug tray.
So $13 for one of these. You bring them the seed, that's it?
Yeah, I bring them the seed, I tell them how many flats I want, and I drive away.
And they grow it out and you come pick it up. Do you generally have to order a quantity of these? Like, meaning, you know, different seeds are going to have different germination times. Some seeds are going to germinate quicker than others. Is it just like one kind of pickup that you do?
You know, if something's ready early, he'll call me early. We did some sunflowers with him, and those were ready a little faster than the lettuces and green onions. But as far as quantity goes, you know, he wants to see a minimum order of about 20 trays, and that's the small scale he's really willing to go. And we have to pay a little bit more at that rate than people who are getting, you know, 100 or even 1,000 trays at a time.
Buying these for $13, how do you think that compares to the savings of having to do it on your own? Forget the quality difference. Like, let's assume you're an expert grower and you can grow great transplants. How much do you think that saves you in time?
Oh, I mean, it saves me tons of time, and me in particular, because we don't live at our farm, so I can't be there to just walk out the house and check the plants at the end of the day. I have to drive out to the property, you know, see if they're wilted, and on days that we don't feel like doing that for whatever reason, maybe the kids are cranky and we got back late from somewhere, that might be you losing your transplants.
Right.
And you know, to pay someone $13 for a tray that I know is going to make it into the ground, it sucks when you wait 3 weeks, you think you've got great plants, one hot day you don't get out there and they're gone, and you got to start over.
It's a form of insurance, right? You know, you're paying $13 to ensure you get a 100% perfect tray. Because I think, you know, when people think starting seeds, it's easy. Fill a flat with soil, put the seeds in, water, and it's done. But the thing you're talking about too, that big missing step in there, is all that time in between of continuous waterings, making sure irrigation's running if you have an irrigation setup, or hand watering all that time, or you get pests in the greenhouse, not optimum heat conditions, which can fluctuate a lot out here, you know, 100-degree temperatures, and cools off at night in the winter. So, you know.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we get freezing nights in the winter. So in Carpinteria, they don't. That's why the nurseries are all over there. So they've got the perfect climate to do it. It saves me the hassle, and we might someday still try to grow our own starts, particularly if we go to the paper pot transplanter, because I don't believe they would start paper pots.
Right.
I don't think it lines up with their machinery, but for now it's working great.
There you have it, Max Becher of the OhiFarmStand.com on the benefits of volunteering. I think this is huge. Whether that's volunteering your time for free or volunteering your time at a rate that you normally wouldn't like to be paid, it's really important. You need to build your skills, you need to build relationships, you need to be involved in the space long enough to identify opportunity. It's very hard sometimes to come into a new location or a new business space with this set idea of here's the opportunity, here's the problem I'm going to solve. Unless you're in that business for a while or in that community for a while, sometimes those opportunities aren't obvious, or they're not there in ways that you would expect them to. When I started out the paperpot.co business that I run with Curtis, that's how this came about. It was 3 or 4 years of me interviewing people in the space, being involved in the space before I saw that opportunity. For Max, it was really no different. He didn't have the idea of starting an online farm stand from day one selling number 2 produce. It wasn't until he got on that farm, got on the ground, and saw a waste stream, and then got creative with that waste stream and saw a way to add value to it, to save those vegetables from the compost and sell them to people who could buy that same produce cheaper than they otherwise could because it was number 2 produce. Still good produce, but sellable, and sellable at a better rate. So it's a win-win-win for everybody. It's a win for the farmer, a win for Max, a win for the customer. Again, more on that online farm stand coming up in a future video, a whole in-depth video on that. But if you want to learn more from Max, in the meantime, I've done 2 separate podcasts with Max, one of which focuses on that online store. Links to both of those podcasts below. They're great resources if you're looking for another way to go out there and sell your farm-based product. One other interesting thing that I thought on that farm stop was that seedling business. I think this makes a lot of sense for a lot of farms. Why deal with starting your own seedlings if you're not good at it, if you're already stretched for time, if you don't have the space, if you don't have the right infrastructure? For Max, he doesn't live on farm, he doesn't have a lot of space, his farm is off grid, video on that coming up, so it makes sense to buy his seedlings out for $13 for 200 seedlings. It's more than justified for him. It works. Those numbers are cheap at the end of the day, and it gets him a product that's better quality than he could produce on his own with none of the worry. Like I said in that video, it's insurance. I think it's also a cool business that you could look to potentially get into. If you're somebody who has a lot of nursery space on your farm and you're really good at starting seedlings and you have some extra time or extra labor that you don't know what to do with, why not try and custom grow seedlings for other growers in your area? At $13 a flat, this grower in Carpinteria is making money at it. Run the numbers. It might work for you, and it might save a lot of farmers in your area a lot of time and frustration. This seed starting business, along with the online store, just 2 examples of getting creative, looking for opportunity and finding creative ways to fill that opportunity, solve problems for somebody else. It's not always straightforward. It's not always obvious. Get involved in the space, and then you'll see that opportunity. And then hopefully you have the skills, the relationships, the social capital to pounce on it. That's all for this one. Stay tuned for more episodes with Max coming up right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to this channel to make sure you see them, and be sure to listen to the podcast, which comes out every Wednesday. Farm Small, Farm Smart, focusing on small scale vegetable production. 2 episodes with Max down there in the description below. Thanks for watching this one. Until next time, be nice, be thankful, and do the work.